There's so much happening in the Muskonomy that it's becoming difficult, so difficult to keep track of it all. But then again, we're only at the beginning of a year of inflection and unimaginable transformation with Elon's companies bang in the center of all the action in AI, robotics, and space tech. Larry Goldberg is here with me today to make sense of all of this. Larry is a serial entrepreneur, co-inventor, and author, and managing partner of Lumosenti. Welcome, Larry. Great to have you back.
Great to be here, Royden.
Where do we begin? We've got so much of catching up to do and so much of new stuff. I think first, a bit of relief in some ways that the Supreme Court hasn't released is this decision on the Trump tariffs.
Yeah, there was an opinion from one of the court watchers that the longer they take to make a decision, the more favorable it is for the Trump tariffs. I don't know that that's true. I think there are so many different, pressures and influences that it's really hard to tell to interpret these tea leaves.
Yeah. But at least we've had the can kicked down the road for a few days.
Yeah, at least, yeah. More tariffs to collect.
More tariffs, exactly. All right, so I think safe to say we can begin with a very interesting contrarian take on a reverse merger of SpaceX with Tesla. Chamath Palihapitiya set the cat amongst the pigeons. Let's quickly listen to his soundbite, and then I'll have your thoughts.
Number one is I don't think SpaceX will IPO. I think that it will reverse merge into Tesla, and I think Elon will use it as a moment to consolidate control and power of his two seminal assets into one cap table.
Oh my God, I love that. Wow.
Well, he's talked about that before. He's talked about having a holding company for years of all of the collection. You could put Neuralink in there too, right, Shema? You could put in the Boring Company as well.
Sure. I'm just giving you my contrarian take. There will be no IPO of SpaceX. I think it'll just be, it specifically will be a reverse merger.
I don't know how much you can take Chamath at face value. But what's your take? Oh, you think so?
I think, oh yeah. I mean,
okay. This is interesting. Do tell.
I mean, Chamath is one of the best investors on Wall Street, period.
Right.
I mean, look at some of his calls, apart from the fact, I mean, just recently he profited from the Grok acquisition.
Oh, yes.
He was a long-time investor, I think the first investor in Grok, or the first major investor.
GROQ.
GROQ, yeah. And that company just had a $20 billion partial exit. There's no longer acquisitions. It's now all kinds of deals to try and avoid antitrust. But $20 billion, I mean, who knows what that payday was for him, but it was a couple of $1 billion at least, in my view. So when you get an investor of this quality making that call, now I will say he probably read my piece before he made the call. I mean, this is my book. He's actually, I think that there is.
You should have given me credit, Larry.
Yeah, he should have given me credit. By the way, Jason took credit, and to my knowledge, Jason has never said this before, and Elon did not talk about a holding company. To my knowledge, I mean, I stand to be corrected, but to my knowledge, Elon has never talked, neither publicly nor privately. What happened was an influencer did publicize the idea of forming a holding company, and we're going back 3 or 4 years time, and I think Elon may have said interesting in response. I think that was the sum total of his response to my knowledge. But he has never really advanced the idea of any kind of merger or holding company, neither publicly nor to my knowledge privately, I could, I'm not the authority on the subject of what Elon said or didn't say, and Jason is a close friend of Elon's. But publicly, no, not done. And so Jason, I think, is wrong.
Interesting. So you've advocated, or you've opined that it makes sense for governance reasons for Tesla to take a pre-IPO stake in SpaceX, and we've discussed that here on Over the Horizon.
I'm not
Is
sure
there
whether
congruity?
I'm not sure whether I'm advocating or one thing I'm saying is neither pre-IPO nor post-IPO or at the time of IPO. So from my point of view, timing is simply a matter of the best structure, and then the timing will be really determined by the structure and by the strategy. What I'm saying is that I think that the conflicts of who does what to whom and who provides which service and who provides which product will be better resolved by these companies coming together than being apart. Now, there's specific technical problems to merging them or Tesla becoming a holding company, but I think that there's very significant value to be had, and so I think that it makes sense, and so I think Chamath is right.
Interesting. Whoa. So what will it mean for Tesla stock if indeed Chamath is right?
So
And
if there's a reverse,
will Tesla shareholders get a 10 for 1 or?
No, I think what happens is that SpaceX shareholders will get Tesla stock.
Okay.
And Tesla will acquire control of SpaceX together with Elon. Whether Tesla absorbs the whole of SpaceX, that doesn't seem likely, but it's possible. But they could certainly absorb at least a minority shareholding sufficient to have Elon remain in control of SpaceX while he consolidates a higher percentage of Tesla stock.
Of Tesla, right. So then Tesla by default becomes a sort of an umbrella or a holding company of sorts.
It is already a holding company of sorts. It owns 4 different businesses. This would make it 5 different businesses. In fact, 6 different businesses. Of course, SpaceX is already 2 different businesses with potential for a 3rd business. So it doesn't change anything.
But the 3rd business being AI data centers in space.
Yeah.
But then that would be terafabs, which would be under Tesla.
Well, that's the question, right?
Satellites under SpaceX.
That's the question. SpaceX manufactures satellites. It launches the satellites. So, I mean, who owns what? What percentage of what? So, it's all a very, it's a fascinating game. Look, Elon does not like financial engineering, period. He has steered clear as far as he can from financial engineering. And he tries to make very clean, standalone deals for each of his companies. That has been his history, which argues against what Chamath says and what I'm advocating. So I put the probability at a pretty low level, but it's very interesting that Chamath came up with the same idea as directionally as my idea.
Directionally, yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting thought. I was interviewing the founder of Exlumina, young man, 20-year-old guy named Kian Konrad Tajbaksh, based out of Germany. They're building out or in the testing phase right now, but eventually it will be a grid of satellites, a constellation of satellites in space that will harness energy from the sun and then beam it to other satellites, client satellites and spacecraft through laser energy, through lasers. And I was asking him about whether there was any competition for SpaceX when it came to AI data centers, and his answer was pretty clear. He said, "No, they're just too far ahead. Not even New Glenn can compare, can hope to begin to provide an alternative in terms of cadence and volume." So here's my question to you: is this a reincarnation of the idea of a dojo on steroids? Because you've got launch, you've got the ability to manufacture satellites, you will have the ability to manufacture most advanced AI chips and bring them all together. So you're essentially taking on, and then of course, once you have the satellite constellation, the AI in the form of an AI data center orbiting Earth, you essentially are doing what AWS, Google, SpaceX for launch, and a host of companies are doing, where you're providing the cloud for training, you're providing the compute for training and inference, you're providing the launch, and you're providing the chips, and then also the energy. Thoughts?
Well, the first question is, will the Muskonomy create this data center in the sky? Will that data center in the sky be there to service just Tesla / Muskonomy, or will they sell that compute to the world? Open question. Because if you think about the compute that the Muskonomy is going to require, it's very, very considerable. Yeah. Look, I've written papers on this, and I've published on X as well, that the future competition is not, software SaaS solutions. The future is not providing SaaS solutions. The future is walled gardens of data, providing AI capabilities on proprietary data. Nobody has better proprietary data than Tesla. Nobody has a larger, maybe Apple, but Apple are not prepared to use their proprietary data, their private data. But Tesla has this huge repository of real world driving. Nobody has anything to equal it. One assumes they will have a huge repository of robot data. Also, nobody able to equal it. Certainly not of observational, movement within the world. Now, NVIDIA are betting on being able to generate this kind of data, but generated data is not real world data.
Yeah.
One could argue.
And it's very problematic for training.
Very problematic. But who knows? I mean, there are unknowns here that proliferate everywhere. But the point that I'm trying to drive at is that it's unclear to me that Elon will use these great data centers in the sky that use no energy from Earth, that use the found energy in the space. It's unclear to me that he will make that data or that compute capability available to the rest of the world, because he's going to need so much of his own for his driving, for his real world, for his robots moving through space, moving in space, and so I think it'll be years before that is used for any other purpose but the Muskonomy.
Okay, interesting. So since you brought up SaaS, I think we can maybe move towards that part of our planned conversation. Let me just bring this post up of yours. and this is where you say, second time this week, Chamath is following up an idea I first mooted back in March of 2024. I penned a warning to SaaS companies that the business model was obsolete. And if this was where their strategy lay, they needed a rethink. This is, Chamath, let's just quickly listen into the soundbite. This is again from the All In podcast.
Who's your loser 2026?
I will pick the software industrial complex. So these are the companies that sell licensed SaaS to the corporations of America. It's about a $3 to $4 trillion a year economy because of the advancement of these models and the advancement of these technological techniques that we are all uncovering, building agents, building systems. I think you're going to see that total economic opportunity shrink and contract aggressively. The companies will still be able to do their business. It'll just be at a much, much lower incremental revenue.
And then, of course, this is your post from, I think, 2024.
Yeah, March of 2024.
Yeah, where you spell out your thoughts on why this is what you think is going to be the biggest problem for SaaS companies. Can you talk us through your...
Yeah, SaaS companies, sell you on a subscription basis, and you're so new to these subscriptions now. People are really, not very happy about them. But think about a financial organization or any business having to subscribe to its software, and the subscription getting more and more expensive every year, and having to upgrade from year to year, and your software vendor has you wired in to pay them X $1,000 or X $100,000 or X $1 million a month. It's a big number. And how useful is it anymore in a world where software becomes so commoditized, because you can simply say to your agent, your agentic AI, build me a software piece to do this, or change my software piece and do that. So software becomes a valueless product of very little value, unless you have data that nobody else has got, that you can train a piece of agentic AI to do your bidding based upon its knowledge of this data that nobody else has, giving you this tremendous advantage. So I argued back in early 2024, that the future for these SaaS companies, and now you're talking about the entire software industrial complex, is really in jeopardy, because their software is going to become valueless, and people are going to stop paying these monthly subscriptions. And come Chamath, not Johnny come lately, but Johnny come with a lot of knowledge and experience, because he's building a software company to build software for people using AI.
Yeah.
And he sees now what I saw then, and it's becoming even more clear. So some of these SaaS companies, some of these great SaaS companies that were valued, 30 times revenue, 60 times revenue, 100 times revenue, are collapsing in value on the market.
Yeah. And just look at what Claude Code did a few days back. It just built core work entirely by itself.
Yep.
To assist non-coders with everyday tasks.
And,
AI is already doing this.
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, this was to be expected. It was, it was a given. But I've got another prediction to make. AI will stop building software and start executing the actual tasks without software being built. So even that intermediate step is going to go away in due course.
Okay, that sounds exactly a lot similar to what Elon said on the Joe Rogan podcast about the future of the phone. You won't have apps.
Yeah.
You won't have an app store. Your AI will just
Absolutely.
serve you everything.
Absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And that's very important from the phone point of view and the software on the phone. But I'm talking about enterprise scale software. Now,
Yeah. Wow.
Chamath started 8090 with the idea of using AI to execute enterprise scale requirements, and quickly discovered that AI wasn't there, and they had to use AI to actually write the software. But the day is coming, mark my words, that AI will actually do the execution of the task without having to write the intermediate software. And then the only problem lies in testing AI's ability to do the right thing within the right timescales. So
reliability is going to be a big problem, big challenge.
Well, liability is already a big problem, but we seem to be digesting it.
No, reliability.
Reliability, yeah. Reliability and liability are, they go hand in hand. So, reliability is going to always, but we'll use AI to police the reliability. Look, the time is coming where software is not going to be a thing. I mean, it's going to be a direct colloquy between ourselves and the computer system, and the computer system's going to execute. And so, we're getting to that, that moment where we're in a true, transition to this new world.
Singularity. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like something out of the Iron Man movies.
Look, I'm just very glad I'm no longer in the software business. And it is not by accident that Lumicenti, my venture fund, our first investment is not in a software company.
Yeah.
It's in a company that uses AI to do a diagnostic. But software is going to become a terrible business to be in. Not that people won't make very large amounts of money in it. It's just that the way of making money right now, and the way of writing software right now, and the whole structure of the software industry is going to be changed dramatically, and nothing more dramatically than when we start getting, data centers in the sky.
Yeah, we're literally going from software eating the world to AI eating the world.
And software being eaten along with the rest of the world.
Oh boy, what an exciting future. I just hope we don't see an AI war, AI versus AI.
Well, in a way that may be a better way of fighting than human versus human.
Yeah. But of course, I don't know if humans will be left unscathed in an AI versus AI war. There's always a cost.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so let's pivot back to SpaceX. And there's this really interesting post that I wanted to talk to you about. This is from Aaron Burnett of Mark 33. He says, $30 billion from a SpaceX IPO should be viewed as a time compression tool. SpaceX generates meaningful cash, so IPO capital pulls forward existing compounding loops rather than unlocking new programs. With this in mind, we believe the use of funds most likely falls into these 4 buckets. 1, Starship manufacturing infrastructure. 2, Starship vehicle production. 3, Starlink V3 satellite build-out. 4, Starthink orbital compute. What do you make of this? Well, I have, with my meager brain, believed that we should look at Tesla plus SpaceX, that part of the Muskonomy, with the Boring Company as infrastructure verticals for Earth, on-world and off-world, whether it's on the moon, Mars, beyond. Transport infrastructure, labor infrastructure, energy infrastructure, compute infrastructure, intelligence infrastructure. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, that's not, that's not any different from what Aaron is saying. By the way, Aaron Burnett is probably one of the most knowledgeable people about SpaceX outside of SpaceX. So he runs a great company, Mach 33. They do incredible research and they do very, very targeted space investments. So,
and I've been lucky to have him and Vlad, his colleague, join me on the podcast in the past.
Amazing guys. So I think he's right. I think, any amount of money raised in a SpaceX IPO is going to be poured into infrastructure, and infrastructure in manufacturing the means and in the means itself to get to the moon, Mars, and beyond. But I mean, that's where it's all going now. I would love to talk to Elon about his views on using on the limits of chemical power to build rockets. And are we at the limit now with Starship, and do we go beyond that limit? When do we get there? What is required to get there? And does that change the equation? That's, I think, the looming question in my mind. I know Jared Isaacman, the NASA administrator, has spoken. He's spoken about that again and again. He clearly has it top of mind. I'd love to get Elon's take on it, because I think that if there's going to be 30 billion raised, and I do believe, by the way, it's going to be more than 30 billion. I believe the level of interest in SpaceX,
phenomenal.
There's been nothing like it in my experience in all my time in the markets. I can't remember a more anticipated public listing.
I've had chats with people who think that raising $40 billion is going to be a problem. My response to them has been, look, when in the past have you had a company like SpaceX list? Why in the world would you have any shortage of availability of funds?
Saudi Aramco raised $25 billion.
Right.
And that was several years ago.
Yeah. That
was in fairly discounted dollars, depreciated dollars now. So just taking the Saudi Aramco, 25 billion was, it was so easily raised. There was such an oversubscription. I think that $30 billion would be oversubscribed. I think 40 to 50 billion is really where the ticket lies right now. And the only counter I think that could even reach a consideration as a competitor is Anduril. Anduril is definitely a potential, $20 billion raise, $10 to $20 billion raise.
Okay, for a fundraise, you're right. But in terms of impact on the global economy and the Muskonomy, comparatively, at best, I would say Anduril would be the sixth defense prime. Then I would place SpaceX far above that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I'm not talking about any other thing but the desire of investors to put money into their product.
Right.
And so that issue of desire, I think, is central to my views, honestly.
On that, I agree. Absolutely. When do you think Anduril will list, as a side note?
Look, when SpaceX lists, it will blow open the public markets. The public markets have been somewhat closed. Last year was an opening, and not a normalization, but an opening. SpaceX will not only normalize it, but it will blow it open, and I think Anduril will follow in its wake very shortly. It'll be one of the early followers. They have got there is such demand for their stock.
Product,
It's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And,
can't wait
you
for
know,
that.
there's such thirst for public listings, for new public listings right now. I believe that a successful SpaceX listing will change the conversation. And look, we're about to end. We can talk economics very briefly. We're about to
Yeah, yeah.
enter a massive economic growth period.
Yeah.
Right now, the economy is growing at about 6% with low inflation. Inflation rate is now under 2%. If you look at trueflation, we have a 1.7 handle, 1.7 something. And right now the economy is growing at, you know, that 6% mark. A little bit depends on what happens with tariffs, but nonetheless, we're growing at a tremendous rate, and it's going to explode. By explode, I mean I'm expecting a 7 handle before the year is out. When you have this level of growth, the markets get very frothy, and I can see 50, 60, 100 companies come to the market because there's so many companies that have avoided the market now. So it's going to be very active this year.
Yeah. I think that's probably why Trump made that comment yesterday, that out of complete frustration that every time he wants the markets to go up, that the Fed or the Dems do something to bring it down, especially the Fed. So, yeah, I agree with you. But of course, that's politics, right?
Well, in May, the Fed leadership changes, and
Yeah.
when that happens, you know, I think we will see, you know, very big change.
Yeah. Since we've digressed a bit, let me ask you this as well. The investigation against Powell, there's so much of pushback. $2 billion plus for renovating a building. Come on.
It's impossible to comment, but you're right. It does seem a bit ridiculous. But, you know, the charge, the apparent charge, we don't know, but the apparent charge is not that he spent 2 point something billion. The apparent charge is that he misled Congress. Now, that's pretty serious charge.
That is serious.
And if he did, then wow.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like Powell. It seems like Powell is a straight shooter, even if he doesn't, you know, comply with.
See eye to eye with Trump.
Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see. It's not a good thing to be prosecuting the Fed chair, but on the other hand, if he did mislead Congress, that changes everything. If he didn't mislead Congress, then not good for.
But I
Trump,
think that's the thing about this. My view on this is that nobody should be beyond accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It would be. Look, this whole business of using the Justice Department to pursue the political enemies, this started really in the Nixon years. You know, the whole prosecution of Nixon opened the door. Now, whether it was right or wrong, the prosecution of Nixon, I guess it was correct. That's what history shows. But it opened the door, and Biden blew the door right off. I mean, Biden went crazy. There's no question that his Justice Department undertook very strong political action and encouraged political action from the states. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, you're being political, but it's just simple, objective, historical fact. And the problem is that set the stage for the subsequent government to react in turn, because that's just how our politics work. And now, you know, we're down this road, and it's the path is not going to be. people aren't going to deviate from this path. They're going to continue down this path, and it's terrible. And Biden is to blame, and his Justice Department was absolutely to blame. You only have to look at the number of Republican administration folk who were hauled in front of court one way or the other to understand just how bad it was, compared to virtually none. In fact, none under Trump's first administration. So, yeah, really bad.
But I think this administration, we're going to see a lot of stock taking, a lot of people being held to account, including former presidents.
That would be
That'd
ugly.
interesting. Yeah.
That would be ugly.
Okay, well, let's pivot back to SpaceX. And continuing from Aaron's post, there's this. Brendan Carr, posting a few days back, President Trump is restoring America's technology leadership. The FCC authorized SpaceX to deploy and operate up to 15,000 next-gen satellites, enabling even better, faster, and more advanced internet services in the country. Great for SpaceX, but there's a bit of confusion over what these next-gen satellites were. Were they version 3 of the Starlink satellites, or were they the quota that was left over for V2? Your thoughts?
I think the way I read it, and I could be wrong, it is worded that it allows either or. I think that it's specific as to bandwidth and to the actual slice of the spectrum that they're given. So as long as they remain within that bandwidth and with that slice, although they do have a count of satellites, so one would expect the count would be varied depending on which type of satellite. You know what? It's not material. And you know why it's not material? It's quite clear that the FCC will now rubber stamp.
Yeah, that's what
SpaceX's
that was going to be my next question to you. Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is a clear signal, as you say, that things have changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said as much in his release. You know, he's saying, we're open for business.
We're open for business.
Yeah.
And of course, there's this next interesting bit. Sawyer Merritt had posted a couple of days back. SpaceX won a $739 million contract from the Pentagon for U.S. military launches. SpaceX was awarded the full amount, with no portion going to competitors. I think.
Yeah, and I posted in response to that. I said, that there's clearly a reason for it, and that is SpaceX is the only one that's performed. All other vendors have been late, consistently late, and consistently failed in their venture. In fact, today it was announced that SpaceX is going to launch the next generation satellite for the Air Force, positioning satellite, global positioning satellite, GPS satellite, which should have been launched by ULA, but ULA is late again. So they've moved that to Falcon 9. And they're giving ULA another satellite to launch a little bit later, but ULA will be late with that, and SpaceX will launch that. And what the Air Force is saying, look, it's enough. We're going to give the business to SpaceX.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's rewarding to see that switch.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's a reality check. I think there's a sense of urgency that this administration has brought in, and a reality check.
God, if you want to see sense of urgency and if you want to see switch, let's talk about Pete Hegseth's visit to SpaceX.
Perfect segue, please.
Oh my God. I mean, Pete Hegseth, firstly, I have to say, Pete Hegseth is, to me, the biggest surprise of this administration. I think we've got an amazing group of people in this administration. But, I was very suspicious of Pete Hegseth because of everything the press told me about Pete Hegseth. He's a youngster, he's got no experience, he doesn't have any basis to be a Secretary of Defense, he's a lightweight, he doesn't know what he's doing, and, he's a wife beater, and he's a drug addict, and everything I heard about him said, oh my goodness. But if you listen to Pete Hegseth's speech at SpaceX, and if you haven't listened, you better go and listen to it end to end. This guy is cleaning house in a way we haven't seen, ever in the Defense Department, the Department of War. He's everything that is wrong about the Defense Department, everything that we have wailed about in the last 20, 30, 40 years that I can recall, going back to 1963 that I can recall, during the disasters of the Vietnam War, during the endless travails of trying to get weapon systems developed. It's been a disaster, this Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth has taken this thing by the throat and he is throttling it. He's going to kill the old system. And what emerges is very interesting. I think it's going to be really good, but time will tell. But man, he is tackling it with energy I've never seen in government before, ever.
Speaking of which, I want your thoughts. Have you seen a team around any US president that is as effective and as full of stars and stars that actually do transformative work in their own departments as Trump 47?
It certainly looks like it's a,
Yeah.
It
From
certainly
Pete
looks
Hegseth
like
to
it's,
Marco Rubio, of course, Vice President himself. What a phenomenal team.
Yeah, and people in the Democratic side are very, 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 very angry. I think their anger stems from the effectiveness of these people. I hate to say it, but that I think is true. Well, time will tell. Certainly, so far, it looks good. The economy looks like it's roaring. I know people saying, oh, it's very high level of I saw a post today, I responded to it, very high levels of inflation, 2.8% inflation. Yeah, if you look in the rear view mirror, it's 2.8%. But if you look at what is happening today, Trueflation has it right. It's under 1.8%. And we're growing at the fastest rate we've grown for a very long time.
Very long time. Yeah.
And our inflation rate is the lowest it's been for a very long time. So you take our high growth, deduct the low inflation, our growth now far exceeds, even the pop we got post-COVID.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. By the end of Trump 47, what do you think America's growth rate will be?
Well, I've said there's going to be a 7 handle before we end this administration.
Okay.
The quarter by, and the problem is the quarter by quarter is always backward looking. And so your growth may be greater after the Trump administration than it is in the, and that's when I'm saying the growth, I'm saying the growth as published by this Federal Reserve, because it looks back. It doesn't calculate the current rate of inflation, and even the current rate of growth, which is impacted by that current rate of inflation. And I'm talking about net. No, I'm talking about gross growth. So actually, the inflation doesn't matter. So maybe we'll get a 7 handle, and we'll get we'll get to the end of the Trump administration with around 6% growth. That's highest it's been in any administration as I can recall now.
But of course, if the AI and robotics bets pay off, then all bets are off.
Still too early for that because we're talking about 28. I don't think the volume of AI impact and the volume of robots in the ground will yet be where they're ultimately going to achieve.
In terms
These
of goods and
economic,
services,
these economic impacts take like decades, at least a decade, to really become fully effective.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on. Another interesting post, this time from Senator John Cornyn. There's a whole bunch of them that were at the Gigafactory with Elon. Great to see. And this comes at a time when we've just had the House subcommittee hearing on increasing number of autonomous vehicles without driverless autonomous vehicles. A lot of moving parts coming together at the right time.
I wish we'd see Democratic senators there as well. Seriously, I mean, this isn't a partisan issue.
Yeah.
And Elon has been pretty partisan in the past, and he's been nonpartisan in terms of whom he's upset. I mean, he's upset Trump and he's upset Democrats, but it would be good for him to make friends with the other side of the aisle as well.
I thought that there was a little bit of the door being kicked open just ever so slightly when Kamala Harris, I think it was about a month and a half back, she acknowledged that maybe Elon should have been invited to that White House event where Biden praised Mary Barra for being the leader in EV vehicles in America. I thought that would prompt some amount of softening, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure she's a leader or viewed as a leader by the rest of the Democratic Party at this point. Who knows? Yeah, it would be good, to work across the aisle, but it's not happening. So the result is that everything turns on what happens in the elections at the end of the year. So, and they're coming fast. I mean, the end of this administration's coming fast. Only 3 years to go. That's all that's left. It's we're looking at a one-term president.
Yeah, essentially a one-term president in the second term. And I don't remember, as long as I've been a journalist, having seen this sense of urgency and this frenetic pace of legislation, primarily through executive orders, decision making, as in any U.S. presidency, as far as I can remember.
No, I've not seen it. This is redolent of the days of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So it was before my time, just before my time. Roosevelt died the year I was born. No, the year before I was born, excuse me. So we've never seen it before. And it is both good and bad. Good in the sense of the movement has been spectacular. Bad in the sense that it could be reversed by a subsequent president.
Yeah.
So one would like the stuff to have been done in some
through Congress.
Yeah, some law-making process.
Yeah.
One of the good things about all of the Obama edicts, presidential, decisions and edicts, is they could have been reversed, and they were reversed by Trump 1. But then Trump 1 was reversed by Biden. And Biden did get a lot passed through Congress.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he spent a gigantic amount of money unnecessarily after COVID, and that we've paid for dearly. Hopefully that's behind us now, and hopefully, that if a Democrat gets elected, he won't be able to do the same thing.
But having said that, if you look at the critical decisions that Trump took, like the CHIPS Act, it was Biden who took them forward, and AI regulation, of course, in perhaps a wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, who wanted that regulation? That was disastrous. It was potentially disastrous.
Yeah, but on the CHIPS Act, they pretty much continued course from where Trump left it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying everything Biden did was bad, but I was saying there's some very bad things that he did.
Yeah, for sure.
Very bad things. Yeah. I mean, he left he caused enormous level of inflation. Enormous. I mean, it was unnecessary. It didn't advance anything, and opened the borders, which have been politically a catastrophe. And even today, the Democratic Party stands behind this policy of open borders, and it just puzzles me. There's no other nation on earth that does this.
Yeah. But then it's also the Republican congressmen and senators, right? I mean, why is it, Larry, do you think that you still have Republicans not falling in line with the agenda of the Trump administration? Is it personal interests? What is it?
Every single congressman and every single senator is not answerable to the president. They're answerable to their own state or local voters. And so their interests lie there first. And so you get so many conflicting interests in such a large country with such different populations and different, industries and different climates and different water supplies and different. And each state has its own structure in terms of healthcare. And so if you're a politician at the local level, you advocate for and you maintain policies that support that local person. And that's the nature of the democracy. It's representational democracy, and each player represents his or her locality or state. And so you're never going to get everybody falling in line because the president said march in this direction. You're going to get a large majority of those in the same party marching with your president, as long as your president is advocating policies that are, aligned with his party. And not all of them do. Yeah. We've seen departures before.
Yeah.
Look, Clinton was the great, what did he call it? Triangulation. Yeah. He triangulated between those forces, and he was brilliant at it. Not many have done that well. Famously, George Bush failed terribly. When he got elected the second time, he said he had a mandate, and he ended up not having a mandate. And so it ended up that he didn't have a mandate, I should have said. So, I mean, we don't have a president that is given to compromise right now. So he's going to be losing, a lot of people in his party at the margins. And there's no margin to be...
That's why, to be lost. And it kind of surfaced in his offhand comment that day. It was very surprising to me, where he said, if the Republicans don't do well in the midterms and the Dems get sufficient numbers, they'd probably impeach him again.
Well, all they need is a majority in the lower house, the House of Representatives, to actually to pass a bill of impeachment. It's not going to be easy for them to get that majority because currently, it looks to me like they may squeeze a majority. It's possible, but it's not going to be by much. And I think there are quite a few Dems who would not have the appetite for another impeachment battle.
Yeah.
It's, but there's a very strong appetite, certainly on the left wing, and they are dominant right now. So they may actually moot an impeachment bill, but whether or not it'll pass, I don't know. On the other hand, the chances of it passing in the Senate are zero. So it will just be performative, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, if it does come, then any future Republican administration majority will reciprocate in kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't get it why Republicans can't get together on the filibuster and just do away with it.
There's a very good reason.
Do tell.
Well, they won't be in control of the Senate in some time in the future. And do they want a Senate that's just as compliant to the president? The filibuster has been an important impediment to, thoughtless laws in the past. I think it's a good thing. I think Senate was invented as a deliberative body, and it hasn't been very deliberative. What has given it a deliberative appearance is the filibuster. So it's hard to pass bills, but on the other hand, if it were easy to pass bills for the majority, it may not have been a good thing.
Yeah, I just wonder what is the opportunity cost at a time as critical as this, geopolitically, for America?
It's a good question, and the answer is that's why the president is operating by veto, by edict power. One of the problems that we have right now is, the fact that we have all of these non-executive, independent agencies acting, extra constitutionally, and I think they're going to be struck down. I think it's going to change everything, and it needed to happen. I think that will change how Congress has to pass laws, and it will change Congress's approach, and that may return us to a better place. So I think reform is going to happen, but I think it's going to happen through the courts.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's talk about a really fascinating tweet from Elon. Here it is. He says, Tesla will stop selling FSD after the 14th of February. FSD will only be available as a monthly subscription thereafter. Boy, oh boy.
1 month notice.
What gives? There's so many theories around this. Let's start with
it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that the subscription is going to be geared to the value of FSD. So if on February 14th it's announced that the drivers are out of the car and we're no longer having supervision and we're in real robotaxi world, the value of FSD goes up significantly. Why? Because every car potentially becomes, an Uber beta, and the potential revenue from that becomes very high. So the value of FSD climbs. And then the value of FSD climbs every time, Tesla achieves a goal of a given number of miles, a given number of cars out there, a given number of percentage of the market, a given expansion of the rideshare market in absolute terms. And so at a point in time, a car with FSD is going to become extraordinarily valuable, and they want to capture that value. So I think this is the right step strategically, and I think it sends a signal that very shortly we're going to see the supervisors out of the car, and very shortly we're going to see full-scale expansion of the fleet, of the robotaxi fleet.
So, do you think the federal regulation on autonomous vehicles will come around the same time, or will we have to wait a little longer? Because you just had the House subcommittee hearing on Tuesday.
Interesting. I don't know. It doesn't seem practical that a bill could be passed in a month. I think that any bill takes, if it survives at all, takes I don't know, minimum of 2, 3, 4 months. So it's hard to believe that we will be out of that realm. But I think the president could issue an executive order allowing special dispensation for a given number of vehicles over and above what the bill prescribes. In my view, that's possible.
Okay, so here's my next question to you, which is, you have the new compensation plan, and under the new compensation plan, one of the milestones, one of the earliest milestones that Elon needs to target is Tesla having 1 million robotaxis in commercial operation, I think defined as daily average aggregate of 1 million vehicles, but this is over a consecutive 3-month period. So if you have FSD in vehicles that could be deployed driverless to the robotaxi network very easily, let's just say all hardware for cars, this could happen very quickly. He could be hitting that mark.
I don't think so.
Why?
The deployment of privately owned vehicles into the Tesla fleet is a milestone that's going to happen well after the fleet is building quite high, because there are just so many issues relating to that. There's so many infrastructure, legal, it's very complicated operationally to do. And you don't want the bulk of your fleet to be that, because people are going to need their cars. They don't want their car, you don't want people buying cars simply to do that. You want to have people use, their spare capacity to do that. So my judgment is that that's like the dessert. That's not like the first course or the second course. It's the dessert. I think the first course has to be, let's get the infrastructure, let's get the product fully engaged. Let's get the infrastructure working right. Let's understand it. Let's get the pricing right. Let's get the product perfected. And then let's work, once we got the product perfected, then let's work on the product of, feeding in the retail supply, the retail owners as a supplier. That would be my approach. I'm not Elon Musk. He could well flip the scenario, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, because the reason I asked you that, because each of these tranches equates to a certain number of shares, right? And with the SpaceX IPO coming up, I'm just wondering if that goes into the
Elon
equation.
will game. I don't think Elon will game strategy for his tranche. He's never done that before. He doesn't play the game of trying to pump the share price. He doesn't play the game of trying to pump his tranche. I mean, he pursues the business as the strategy evolves in his head according to the algorithm. And so, if you think about the algorithm, he He's going to do the refinement later. He's starting by taking out all the non-essential things. So I may be 100% wrong, 180 degrees out on my analysis, but that's my analysis.
Okay.
And I think he's said something to this effect as well, if I recall it.
Okay, fair enough. Very quickly, let's move on to the next topic I wanted to speak to you about, and this is the new supercharger option that's open to private individuals and businesses. Phenomenal idea. It's been around for a bit, but I think the potential for this exploding now is at peak. So if you go back to, I think it was the 70s and 80s when you had this flood of Indian-owned gas stations open up. But this is great for expanding the network. Do you think this is only going to be for commercial vehicles, or will you also see them for the semis and freight lines?
For the semis, there's no doubt that's already happening. So, Pepsi have their own mega chargers.
Yeah.
And some of the other early adopters have got their own mega chargers. And there are mega chargers being built now in supercharger sites. So we will see a dramatic expansion of the mega charger network by the end of this year. And we will see a broad adoption of mega chargers by those who buy the semis. That's going to be one of the value statements of buying the semi, that you get a mega charger, the ability to buy and install a mega charger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in being able to install the charger is a really good thing, being able to use it for commercial purposes. So that's a great thing. So Tesla charging network has been an incredible story. I mean, it really gives its own Harvard Business School, study. I mean, such a far-reaching, such foresight that Tesla had to build it, and even today, it's peerless globally.
I mean, what a phenomenal infrastructure vertical in and of itself.
Yep. And they've just executed flawlessly.
Yeah, and it's been just on the down low. Just quietly, they've just expanded around the world. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
99% uptime. That's crazy.
99.2 or 9. Yeah, it's not just 99%.
Yeah.
And compare it with any other charging network, with the possible exception of Total in Europe, which is a very good network. It is amazing, just amazing.
Yeah. All right, we're coming to the last topic on the docket. Tesla, Larry, I gotta speak to you a lot more often so that our weekly chats don't extend beyond the hour mark. But
you should break it up into two.
Yeah. We should. Especially there's so much happening now. But I think let's end this with a bit of politics. And this is the Billionaire Tax Act. All hell breaking loose in California. Palmer Luckey posting this, saying this is a critical aspect of the Billionaire Tax Act. It makes founder-led companies practically illegal. If a founder CEO of a $1 billion private company owns 3% but keeps 100% of the voting power, he gets taxed on the value of the whole company. 50 million tax bill for 30 million net worth. And Chamath as well says, unfortunate update as of today, more calls from friends. The total wealth that has left California is now roughly $1 trillion worth. We had $2 trillion worth of billionaire wealth just a few weeks ago. Now 50% of that wealth has left, taking their income tax revenue, sales tax revenue, real estate tax revenue, all their staff and their salaries and income taxes along with them. In other words, by starting this ill-conceived attempt at an asset tax, the California budget deficit will explode, and we still don't know if the tax will even make the ballot. Boy, oh boy.
And the interesting part of this is like deja vu. Because Elon left the state because of the state's actions against him and the political pressure against him. And they learned nothing. Go get the billionaires. And, France taught us that you tax billionaires, you pick rich people and you tax them beyond a certain level. They're very mobile.
Yeah.
And they had to back off. And, it's this whole California political environment is just toxic, full of hatefulness, focused hate against white people, focused hate against rich people, focused hate against Republicans. It's just terrible,
Yeah. And of course, we've seen this experiment play out with devastating effect in the United Kingdom, where 10% of the population pays 90% of the tax, and that's millionaires and billionaires. And we've seen the exodus from the UK to places like the UAE and other countries across the world. If 10% of your population is paying 90% of the tax, what's going to happen when they leave? What are these guys smoking?
Well, Britain for a long time was a tax haven for very wealthy people.
Yeah.
And, the problem about that is that you start building all these, people who are who hate rich people, or who have a problem with people having wealth beyond what they have. But nonetheless, it hasn't gone well. Their attempt to try and tax them, it's going to cost them a huge amount of money because they were paying the piper.
Yeah.
So you're right. On the other hand, having this gigantic wealth gap is a problem. And I think in the United States, the problem is exacerbated by how bad our healthcare system is. We have an extremely bad healthcare system for our indigent people who are not wealthy, people who are in the lower rungs, and so what we do is we spend an extraordinary amount of money delivering very poor services to those people
in the most suboptimal manner.
In the most suboptimal manner. And so that makes things far worse in terms of, people who are receiving these these very expensive benefits, but they're very poorly delivered, and they're pointing to people who enjoy extremely good benefits and apparently doesn't really cost them very much money. So you get, such terrible discontinuities in terms of the comparison between the wealthy and the poor. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I don't, there's no quick fix.
Yeah, but for Silicon Valley, of course, that's these implications are very different.
Yeah. I mean, Silicon Valley may become Silicon Desert. Why would somebody start a company in Silicon Valley when they could start one in Austin where they're welcome?
Yeah. Well, again, I cannot fathom what's going through the brains of these politicians. But why?
Well, in this case, it's not so much the politician. It's not the politicians in this case. It's the trade unions, and the politicians can't. The Democratic politicians don't feel empowered to oppose the trade union.
But
it's the trade
there
unions
again, right? Yeah. But this needs pushback. And there's very little from the Democrat politicians.
The trade unions have got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
What does it trouble them if all these guys leave the country? leave the state. What does it trouble them? They've got a very narrow focus, very narrow vision. Doesn't affect them. But why the politicians need to kowtow to them, I don't understand. It doesn't seem to be very. It doesn't seem to be very valuable from a political point of view.
Well, you can't fix everything overnight.
Uh,
I guess some things will change only once people learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry. I take
Thank
so
you,
much
Roy.
of your time. I take so much of your time, but I'm so grateful. And it is always such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank
It's
you
fun.
so much.
Thank you.